thanks for making the time to come and chat to us online about Baptists and Anabaptists, Ian. Maybe you could introduce yourself a bit to the wider community.
Yeah, so my name's Ian Randall, originally from the north of Scotland, and spent a lot of years in the south of England, including in Baptist ministry and in teaching at Spurgeon's College in London, and then teaching at the International Baptist Theological Seminary in Prague for several years. In the last few years in Cambridge, I've been involved in some research work, especially with the Cambridge Centre for Christianity Worldwide, and I also do spiritual direction, and I do quite a lot of writing.
Quite a lot. Understated. Well done. So how did your interest in Anabaptism, Anabaptists, how was that started?
Yeah. It was started through an interest that I had anyway in church history and in the Reformation period, but my first meeting with real life Anabaptists, if you like, was, as was the case for quite a lot of people, was with Alan and Ellie Kreider. So that was in the 1970s, and we were in a Baptist church which was more on the Reformed sort of wing, if anything, but had an interest in radical Christianity. And so we made connections with the London Mennonite Centre and my wife and I stayed with them. So that was really a big leap forward in terms of understanding the Anabaptist tradition and its values.
Yes, there's nothing like staying with the Kreiders to experience it firsthand. Very true.
Exactly.
I did that about 10 years after you, I think, maybe a bit more.
Right.
So, yeah. So are there particular things about the Anabaptist traditions and Anabaptism that, have really focused your attention?
Yeah. It actually connected with my early Christian experience when I'd never heard of the Anabaptists, but in my teens, when I was really seriously searching and reading the New Testament, the part that came across to me most powerfully was about following Jesus, taking up the cross and following Jesus. So that was really my entry into the Christian faith. For other people, there are very different things, but that was where I started and actually continued. And so when I saw the Anabaptists as those who particularly stressed this, then it all made perfect sense.
Right, okay. But not enough sense to become a Mennonite. Somehow you remained a Baptist.
I did indeed. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of common ground. That would be my view of things. I think the Anabaptist tradition, in terms of that emphasis on following Jesus, is very important. But in terms of the community of believers, I think as Baptists we have a very similar tradition. We would use slightly different language about the covenant community, but I think there's a huge amount that is common. So I've always been happy to be a Baptist with this Anabaptist flavor.
I think there's a few people around perhaps like that, perhaps more so in the UK and in Europe than in other places, but that's another story that we'll explore somewhere else. Yeah. So you're still doing research in Anabaptist areas?
The research I've done in more recent years is to do with a community called the Bruderhof community, which began in Germany in 1920. And for the last probably 15 years now, I've been a kind of historian of the Bruderhof. It means the place of brothers. And they are in the Anabaptist tradition. That's where they place themselves. But within that, specifically in the Hutterite tradition of community of goods. So again, my wife and I have spent, at their invitation really, periods of time staying with the different communities in England, in other parts of Europe, and in North America. So yes, I've written several things about them.
Well, there you go.
And
Okay.
that's pretty recent.
Yeah, pretty recent. Yeah. So you're not necessarily involved in an institutional setting at the moment, offering courses and things.
No, 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 that's true. Going back to when I started at Spurgeon's College in 1992, Stuart Murray Williams and I started actually on the same day. And so we went on to work together on the construction of a master's degree in Baptist and Anabaptist studies. And I took that across to Prague, and now essentially with modifications, that's at Bristol.
Right. Okay. So it's not at Spurgeon's anymore?
Not as far as I'm aware. I don't think there's anybody who's looking after the Anabaptist side currently.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that the Baptist-Anabaptist connection needs a champion, it seems, to keep pushing it forward. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Are there things that you've said you've just had a look at all the other folk that we've done interviews with? There are other things that you'd want to add to fill in gaps that may have come to your attention?
I don't think there's particularly gaps. The books that they recommended, for example, in different interviews that you've had, would be the books that I would also recommend. My only addition would probably be, as I said, to do with the Bruderhof. So the most substantial thing I've written is called A Christian Peace Experiment, which is on part of the history. So that's a book on part of the history of the Bruderhof.
So the community of goods, is a significant part of their theology and praxis.
Absolutely.
Do you want to explore that a little for us?
I think it's a sort of monastic community, but of course with families, not only single people, some single people. And I think it is a calling. So that would be a very, in some ways, demanding calling, because you give up your own property to join the Bruderhof. But many people have done that. And I think their view is quite ecumenical. So they're not saying we are exclusively the people. They work very widely, and their publication, The Plough, is a really outstanding publication with many authors from different perspectives who are writing, not only, in fact, minority of the writers would be from the Bruderhof itself. So the community of goods, I think, has enabled them to be people who give away a lot and who get involved in a lot of mission. Whenever we've been there, somebody's being sent off to do something in a place of need. And because they work as a community, they're able to be much more flexible in that sort of way. So it's been a mixed history. It's not that everything has been easy, and sometimes it's been really, really difficult. But we've found them to be very inspiring.
And where would they be located around the world, these various Bruderhofs? Are they sort of essentially European, or are they North American, or where else?
Probably numerically, the largest number of communities would be now in North America. At one time that was different, but that would be the case now. There's, as far as I know, a couple in Australia, and the newest two, which we visited and spent some time with last summer, are in Austria, and they've established themselves in Austria at the invitation of the Catholic cardinal, no less, who wanted a kind of outward expression of repentance for what was done to the Anabaptists in the 16th century. So he said, we killed them. He's been an amazing figure, actually, coming from the Catholic charismatic movement. He said, we killed the Anabaptists and sent them all out in the 16th century. Now we want them amongst us. Okay.
Well, that might account for why Hubmaier has a plaque in Vienna.
He does. Yeah, we've seen that.
Yeah. I think it's been one of those interesting parts of this conversation to see how many times Hubmeier's name comes up as a starting point for people to explore beyond him to all sorts of other things. But an interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think I've gone through my list of questions and you have already been prepared to answer them all, but thanks for spending some time with us. And
oh, well, it's a great pleasure. I'm glad you're doing this, and 2025 is going to be an important year.
Yeah, well, hopefully we might, who knows, we might see you in Brisbane, but the plan is that we will have the Heritage and Identity Commission do at least something in Brisbane to honour this 500th year.
Yeah. And you've got people that I know and have great respect and love for, who are part of the BWA, especially Melody Maxwell, who was one of my PhD students in Prague.
Ah, right. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Great.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for your
Great
time.
to connect with you.